Hi TYB, welcome to your second snapshot of Isaiah. How you going? Is this book stirring a passion in you? Is this book stirring that God is judge and just, and he's looking at his people going, I can see what you're doing and I'm not happy with it. You know, someone said to me, I don't like reading the things about where God's judgmental. And I said to them, you know what? If God didn't do anything when there was a corruption and rebellion, if you had a dad who was watching his child behave just disgustingly and didn't actually step in and go, hey, come on, you need a timeout, you would think that that dad was, you'd be cranky at that dad. You're either cranky at God for not doing something or cranky at God for doing something. And I think you've just got to know the fullness of God's nature, the fullness of what he's doing. His people are supposed to reflect his glory. So Isaiah is going to challenge something in you. Keep going. Now, as we go through this, throughout the history of Israel and Isaiah, and especially the book of Isaiah, can you hear the sound of this prophecy of a king coming? And I want you to, in the dive this week, we're going to say, the dive's about don't bother finding Wally or Waldo, find Jesus. And this king comes through. Ultimately, this king will be ruler, and it talks about the Messiah. This book is about God and Jesus being across all the nation. Who's really in control here? God is in control. He talks about different nations that he's going to use, saying, I'm in control of these nations. I can use these for my glory. Who's really seated on the throne? And even bad circumstance, he uses for his purpose and his will. So let's jump in. The themes. Now, the themes you're going to find in this book are universe. It's got God's perspective on it. It's got this sense of bigness on it. New heavens and new earth. We're going to get to that at the end. Now, did you see in Isaiah 6 where God commissions Isaiah? And this commission is for holiness. So you're going to hear over and over again, and I want you to highlight it, repeated terms, the Holy One of Israel, the Holy One of Israel. Because what he's doing is he's saying, guys, let me use myself as a measuring rod. I'm the Holy One of Israel. You are supposed to reflect me and look at your behavior. So you've got this incredible sound of especially the first, 35 chapters of the Holy One of Israel and this sound of judgment. Now, the structure of the book is this. From 1 to 35, book of judgment. And you've probably already guessed that. From 36 to 39, we've got the book of Hezekiah. And it talks about the history of Hezekiah and what happened. Then from 40 onwards, the first words of 40 is comfort. Comfort my people. And Isaiah prophesies into this new section. A section that he is not actually living in. And he prophesies into post-exile. It's amazing, and talks about the remnant, and he talks about, and it's called the Book of Comfort, Book of Judgment, Book of Hezekiah, Book of Comfort. So you're going to go through these structures as you go through this book. Now, as I said, notice the language, the repeated terms. You are my witnesses, Holy One of Israel, the Holy God of Israel, the sins of the people and how he balances that and measures that. The author. In this snapshot, I want to go through the author. The author is Isaiah. And he introduces himself in the first section, which you probably remember, and it says, son of Amos. Now, Isaiah was one of the greatest writing prophets. This book is just incredible. His name means the Lord saves, or salvation of Yahweh. So his name means the message, this salvation that comes through in the end of the book, and you're going to love it. Amos, Hosea, and Micah are all prophesying at this time over these people. God is passionate for his people not to go into exile. So he's got all the prophets at work, and unfortunately they don't listen. As I said in the last snapshot, we're about 740 BC to about 701 BC in this time period. And Isaiah is a prophet that has a passion. He doesn't care. He prophesies to Hezekiah, and Hezekiah listens to him. And he's got this great relationship, and in his pinnacle moment was when he was prophesying to Hezekiah. And some of them listen to him, some of them don't. But he doesn't care. His passion for the word of God, his passion for his message comes through, and he just keeps going. You've got to be like that. No matter what message God has given you, get that passion of the Lord in and just prophesy. So Isaiah actually dies in about 681, they say, BC. And history tells us that he was sawn in half during the reign of Manasseh, the King Manasseh. And he's in the end of 2 Kings. You can read about King Manasseh. This king is actually a king that they believe Isaiah was related to. Isaiah must have been related to a king because he was in the king's courts. He had access to the king. So they say he must have been related to one. They think it's Manasseh, the very king that put him to death. Imagine that, prophesying in your family start to hate you, and and then you get sawn in too. Crazy way of dying. But he just keeps going. He has a wife. You're going to hear about his wife in chapter 8. She's a prophetess. You're going to hear about his his sons. You're going to hear about his sons. Now, I'm not even going to try and say their name because I will butcher them with my horrible Australian accent. But he has sons. You're going to read about them in chapter 7. And most people believe that his sons had the similar prophetic gift. It was like a prophetic family. The prophetess and Isaiah and his sons. And how cool is that? They're all involved. Now, when you go through Isaiah's hometown is Jerusalem. So he's passionate about Jerusalem. And most people believe that, he lived there. He was, like I said, had access to the kings there. He's saying, guys, we are going to lose our hometown if you don't get it together. And they do lose their hometown. He prophesies to King Isaiah and Jotham and Hezekiah. They say he was prophesying for 60 years. Prophesying, saying, guys, you're going to go into exile. Prophesying for 60 years in whole. He died when he was probably about an 80-year-old man. Having left this beautiful legacy of this book that you are reading. How cool is that? As I said, he probably has, scholars believe at the end of his years, he had about five years of time out. Now, time out not as in exile time out, but time out as in he just kind of came away from this prophetic life. And in that 5 years, God downloaded Isaiah 40 to 66, the future. And God downloads to this prophet. He says, look, the people are going to go into exile, but can I tell you the message after that? And he gives him this message of comfort and remnant and reconciliation. And then again goes again and says, you've prophesied them post-exile, now prophesy the future. And he talks about new heavens and new earth, the future for us today. So as I said, guys, jump into, as you're reading this book, feel the heart of this prophet. Now, most scholars today challenge that Isaiah wrote the whole lot because they just can't justify that this prophetic voice had a prophecy from his time and then into the future. But there's things that run through the whole book that we cannot deny. The Holy One of Israel happens 12 times in the first section and 14 times in the next section. And there's just this beautiful understanding of Jerusalem. So guys, that's up to you now. If you want to have a study of did Isaiah write the whole things? The message of Isaiah, this is the commentary that I have actually studied Isaiah through when I did it in my degree. And I loved this book. I've trashed it, as we do. It's just got tables and all sorts of things. So if you need help in this book, jump into this commentary. It's really good. We'll put it up on the website for you. Now, the style. Isaiah is a creative writer. Don't you love creative writers? So we are going to have in this different writings, oracles. We're going to have different reports. We're going to have prose. What does that mean? It means written or spoken language. We're going to have verses. I want you to go through and highlight all the different styles. If you are a literary person and you notice this stuff, highlight what he's done. Personification. So what does that mean? The sun and the moon are ashamed. You've got, parched lands rejoicing. You've got this personification of things. You've got the vineyard and this beautiful sound of an imagery and metaphor of a vineyard. You've got God's cup of judgment. All these, the rock. You've got this language that just stirs you in the prophetic. His use of imagery is incredible. He uses sarcasm. I gotta love that. I'm Australian. We are a sarcastic nation. And he uses sarcasm. He's like, you read it in 49, I think. It is in 49. He talks about sarcasm to denounce that. How good's your idols over there, people? Like, it's amazing. Inversion, what does that mean? He talks about, the two opposing things. So there's so much different style in this. I want you to really jump in. Now, lastly, what he does is he uses the earlier events of Israel to show the people what's about to happen. Exodus from Egypt, he talks about that. He talks about crossing of the Red Sea. He uses their history to show their present and their future. Sodom and Gomorrah, you're going to hear it. I want you to highlight it. The songs of Moses are in this. So as you adventure through this book, notice what he's doing. Notice who he is. Get to know this prophet Isaiah. Get to know his writing style. It's amazing. Now, just to finish on this, guys, and notice the incredible stories in this book. 185,000 people die. The sun stops still. You know, the first chapters of judgment go through the history, get involved in the history. And then we're going to jump in next snapshot, and we're going to go from 40 onwards. I hope you are loving this. I say that every time, but this book will really stir you in the prophetic, stir you. How big is your God? We're going to talk about next snapshot. This will send your perspective of God right up here. How big is your God? To use the nations for His glory and for His will. Have fun this week. Read it. Get involved in it. Start prophesying. Have a great time in Isaiah, and I'll see you next week or the next part for the next snapshot.